About 6 months into building my business, things were going okay. Actually, things were going well. I was booking meetings, I was closing deals, I'd left my job, I was out on my own doing what I wanted to do. And I thought that would be it. And I thought once I made the leap, once I was free from the 9 to 5, once I was building something of my own, everything would fall into place. But it didn't. Something was off, and it was annoying because to my logical brain, I'd done a lot. I spent money on training, I read the books, I listened to podcasts, I had better habits, I was preparing, I was sacrificing, I was doing all the things within my own strength. But there was a feeling deep down like something was missing, and I just couldn't put my finger on it. See, I've always been a believer. Let me be clear about that. I believed in God. I pray here and there. I say thank God when something went well. I wasn't against him. I wasn't with him. Not really, not in the way that matters. Honestly, it's because I was too busy being with myself. I was the CEO of my own life. I had the strategy. I had the 5-year plan, the vision board. And God was somewhere just in the background, like a consultant I'd call if things got really bad, but not someone I was actually walking with day to day. One of my favorite verses in the Bible is Proverbs 3:5, which says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding." I was leaning all the way on my own understanding every single day. And my understanding is and was limited. My strength was limited. But I didn't see it because the world told me that was the whole point. Figure it out for yourself. Be self-made. Be the architect of your own life. And here's what nobody tells you about that season. The scariest part isn't the failure. The scariest part is when things are going well on paper and you still feel empty. Because at least when you're struggling, you have a reason. But when the meetings are booked, the deals are closing, the business is moving, and you still feel like something fundamental is missing, that's when you realize it. It was never about the situation you're in. It was never about the 9 to 5 job, the business, all the external circumstances. There was something internally that was missing, and no amount of books, podcasts, or strategy was going to fill it. If you're in that place right now where things look fine on the outside, but something is quietly off on the inside, stay with me, because this isn't a mindset video. This is about the war that you didn't know you were in. And what I'm about to tell you is the thing that changed everything. I was at that intersection of life where I knew I needed something else. Something that wasn't on a bookshelf or in a YouTube algorithm. And that's when I felt a pull, not a push, not any type of pressure, not guilt. It was like being led gently, like a hand on your back that you didn't ask for, but somehow needed. A knock on a door I'd been ignoring for years, and it came at the exact point where I tried everything. I read all the books. As I said, I listened to all the podcasts. I'd done all of the things, and I was tired. Not tired as in I needed a holiday, but my soul was tired. The kind where you're still smiling, you're still showing up, you're still performing, but something underneath is quietly caving in. And in that exhaustion, God moved quietly, almost like he'd been waiting for me to stop trying to do it alone. So I thought, you know what, let me open the Bible. And I'm going to be real with you. I opened it with some skepticism, with some sort of attitude. I had this assumption that it was some old fairy tale book with a load of rules that were meant to restrict your life, something you memorize on Sundays and put back on the shelf, something with no real application in today's world. But how wrong was I? How wrong was I? The book was filled with everything: finances, mental health, relationships, identity, purpose, wisdom on how to go through this life, how to manage it, how to become a better version of yourself. I have shelves full of books on all of these topics, and I found that I could literally throw every single one away and keep this one book, and it will be enough. But here's where it hit differently. I wasn't just finding the answers. I was finding out why my old answers weren't working. In Jeremiah 2:13, it says, "My people have committed two sins. They have forsaken me, the spring of living water, and have dug their own cisterns." Broken cisterns that cannot hold water. Broken cisterns. That was me. I was digging my own wells. All the self-help, all the podcasts, all the productivity hacks, and wondering why I was still thirsty. Building containers to store peace in, and every single one of them had cracks. Don't get me wrong, therapy is valuable, habits are valuable, but these things are all supplements, and you can't live off supplements alone. You can buy the best supplements in the world, but if you never actually eat food, you are going to starve. The food is the word. Everything else is a side dish. One scripture changed the way I see everything, not just mental health, I mean everything. And that's Ephesians 6:12, where it says, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in heavenly realm." When I read that, something clicked like a lock turning, because what I took from that was, oh, so what I'm battling with is not because I made the wrong decision. It's not because my life is filled with mistakes that I'm paying for now. It's not because I'm not a good person. It's not because I'm just not enough. It's a battle that I can't see. It's a battle that doesn't exist in the flesh. It exists in the spiritual realm. And that reshaped everything, because once you can recognize what you're actually battling with, it changes how you fight. It doesn't mean you're never going to have a bad day. It doesn't mean you're never going to have stressful moments. But now you can recognize that this is not a battle of flesh. This is not something I can see or touch. It's something in the spiritual realm, and it needs to be fought with different weapons. You can't approach it the same way you would any other problem. It's like putting a plaster on a fracture. You can keep adding all the plasters you want to the fracture, but the bone is still broken underneath. Here's what else that verse gave me. And this part I didn't expect. It gave me grace for other people. Because once you understand this, you start to see the people around you differently. The colleague who snaps at you at work, the friend who pulls away, the person in your life who does something hurtful and you just don't understand why. They are not battling against flesh and blood either. They are fighting a spiritual war. Even if they don't know it, even if they don't believe in Jesus Christ, even if they've never opened a Bible in their life, they are in a spiritual battle. And sometimes they don't even know that themselves. And knowing that gives you the wisdom to have grace in those moments. Instead of reacting, you recognize that person isn't the enemy. They're fighting one. We look at people who take their own lives and we say, but they had everything going for them. They had the job, they had the money, they had the family. They were so charismatic. They seem happy. And we're confused because we're looking at it from the outside. But the battle was never on the outside. It wasn't a battle of logic. It was a spiritual battle. And it's about understanding that that's where a lot of our struggles come from, if not all of them. Proverbs 23:7 says, "As a man thinks in his heart, so is he." See, the enemy knows something that most of us just don't. He doesn't need to destroy your life. He just needs to poison your thinking. Because if he can control the thought, he doesn't have to worry about the action. You'll destroy yourself. If he can make you believe that you're a failure, you'll eventually stop trying. If he can make you believe you're alone, you will eventually isolate. That's how people end up in the darkest place a person can be. Now that I'm in a different place, it's like I can almost see it happening. I can see those moments where the enemy is playing tricks. And now that I have the word, now that I have the wisdom to understand what's going on, I can almost spot it. But looking back, I was blind to it, completely blind. Let me show you how it works. Because once you see this, you can't unsee it. So I'd be lying in bed, everything's fine, I'm at peace. And then out of nowhere, a thought lands. You're behind. Just like that. And it doesn't sound loud. It comes as your own voice. And that's the trick. It disguises itself as you. So you don't question it, you just receive it. Then it builds. You're not doing enough. You should be further along by now. You're failing. And looking back, I would entertain those thoughts. I would literally have a full-blown conversation with them. I'd go back and forth. Am I behind? Maybe I am. What should I be doing differently? Why isn't it working? And within 5 minutes, my mind has been taken to a completely different place. I've gone from peace to despair. And I don't even know what happened. But here's what I didn't realize at the time. That wasn't just me having a bad night. That was a strategy. The enemy brought the accusation. He presented the evidence. He started asking me questions. And I sat there and answered every single one. And that's the game. That's always been the game. Go back to the very beginning. Genesis 3. The serpent comes to Eve, and what does he say? In Genesis 3:1 it says, did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? Did God really say that? He didn't come with a weapon. He didn't come with force. He came with a question, because the enemy knows the power of a question. A question gets you to open a door. A question gets you to engage. A question turns you from a bystander into a participant in your own destruction. He didn't say God lied to you. All he said was, did God really say that? And the moment Eve started entertaining the question, the moment she started going back and forth, the game was already over. And that's the same thing that happens to us. Every single night, every single morning, the enemy slides a thought under the door and disguises it as a question. Are you really good enough? Did God really call you to do this? Are you sure you're not wasting your time? And the moment you start answering, the moment you sit down with it and start having a conversation, he's already won. So here's what I started doing. Every time a thought entered my mind, I stopped asking, is this how I feel? And I started asking, who sent this? In 2 Timothy 1:7, it says, for the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline. If a thought produces fear, it didn't come from the Father. If it produces shame, it didn't come from the Father. If it makes you want to pull away from the people who love you, it didn't come from the Father. If your mind doesn't feel disciplined right now, if it feels out of control, chaotic, under siege, you're not broken. You're dealing with an intruder. 2 Corinthians 10:5 says, we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. Now think about what that one word means, captive. Think about what you do with an intruder. You don't welcome them in. You don't ask them to sit down. You don't offer them a cup of tea. You don't go back and forth and have a conversation with them. You don't hear them out. You attack them. You arrest them on sight. You take them captive. You don't give them the chance to do anything. But what do most of us do? A thought comes in, you're not good enough. And we let it sit down. We let it kiss feet up. We let it get comfortable. We start entertaining it. We pour it a drink. We say, yeah, you might be right. Let me think about that for the next 3 hours. And by the time you realize what's happened. That thought isn't a visitor anymore. It's moved in and it's redecorating. It's running your house. That thought that told you you're behind, arrest it. That voice that said you'll never be enough, put it in chains. You have the authority to do that, not because of who you are, but because of whose you are. Sometimes I wonder, who are we to think our problems are new? Like, we can't get wisdom from people who came thousands of years before us. Like, they didn't have issues. Like, they didn't have mental health problems. Psalm 42:5 says, "Why, my soul, are you downcast? Why so disturbed within me?" That's David, thousands of years ago, talking to his own soul, interrogating his own mind, doing what therapists now call cognitive reframing before the phrase ever existed. You think burnout is new? In 1 Kings 19, Elijah, one of the most powerful prophets who ever lived, was so overwhelmed, so depleted, that he asked God to take his life. And you know what God did? He didn't lecture him. He didn't give him a 5-step plan. He didn't tell him to journal. He let him sleep. He fed him. And then he spoke to him. Not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but in a still, small voice. I realized there's literally an answer to every single issue in life in this book they call the Bible. And it would be foolish for us not to lean on it. It would be foolish not to. Psalm 119:105 says, "Your word is a lamp for my feet, a light on my path." In a world full of influencers and celebrities who change their minds every week, this book is the only thing that doesn't move. So how do we fight back? Number one, we need to change the diet. I remember a season where I was waking up every morning and the first thing I did was check my phone. Emails, social media, news. Literally before my feet even hit the floor, I'd already let the world pour into my mind. And I'd wonder why by 9 a.m. I'd already felt overwhelmed. Romans 12:2 says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing and perfect will." Notice it says renewing, not forcing. Transformation doesn't come from trying harder. It comes from changing what you consume. Your mind takes the shape of whatever you repeatedly pour into it. So I flipped it. I started opening the word before I opened my phone. Before I let the world in, I let God in first. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you, it was some dramatic overnight change, but slowly the mornings felt a bit different. The noise got quieter. The thoughts lost their grip. Start your morning in the word before you start it in the world. Number two, we need to speak back. So when that thought comes, and it will, you don't sit with it. You don't entertain it. You don't pour it a cup of tea. You use the word as a weapon. When the thought says, "This is going to fail," you've wasted your time, you should have stayed where you were, you open your Bible and you read Philippians 4:13 out loud. "I can do all things through him who gives me strength." Deuteronomy 31:6. He will never leave you nor forsake you. I'm not going to romanticize it. The thought might not vanish instantly, but something shifts. It's like the thought loses its authority. Like you've called its bluff. Because a spiritual attack requires a spiritual weapon. And the moment you speak the word back, you're no longer having a conversation with the enemy. You're giving him a verdict. Number three, understanding why you're actually a target. Here's something that reframed everything for me. The enemy doesn't attack empty houses. If you're under spiritual attack right now, the overthinking, the heaviness, the comparison, maybe the guilt that won't leave, it's because you are standing on territory the enemy wants. He doesn't waste ammunition on people who aren't a threat to his kingdom. The fact that you're in this fight is evidence that there's something inside of you worth fighting for. Stop seeing the struggle as proof that something's wrong with you. Start seeing it as proof that something is right with you. And the enemy knows it. I want to take you back to something. Remember the person I described at the beginning? The one booking meetings, closing deals, doing all the right things, but still feeling empty. I want to tell you where I am now. I need you to know that the other side of this is real. I still have those hard days. The enemy still sends thoughts. He still knocks on the door. But the difference is, I don't answer it anymore. I don't let him kick his feet up. I know his voice now. And more importantly, I know my Father's voice. There was a morning a while ago, nothing special about it, but I just sat by my window with my Bible open and a cup of coffee. And it was quiet. Not the kind of quiet where nothing's happening, but the kind of quiet where everything just feels like it was at rest. And I realized this is what peace actually feels like. And it's not the absence of problems. It's the presence of God. Because I still had a list of things to do that day. I still had fires that needed to be put out. I still had things going on within my household that had to be dealt with. None of that had changed. But that moment, sitting there, spending time with God before the world started rushing in, that was true peace. Not because the problems disappeared, but because the one who is bigger than all of them was right there with me. Isaiah 26:3 says, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you." Perfect peace, not partial, not temporary, not good enough for now. Perfect. But look at the one condition: those whose minds are steadfast, not stayed on the algorithm, not focused on the news, not focused on what people think about you, not focused on comparison, on Him. Listen, the war for your mind is real, but the victory has already been won. You're not fighting for victory, you're fighting from it. We go around the houses looking for every other thing. The latest celebrity, the latest influencer advice, the latest video, the latest book. And the answer has been sitting in front of us the entire time. You weren't made to live under siege. You were made to live in peace. So what is it going to be? Keep building broken cisterns or drink living water?